Hey, it's Daniel from GrowingMusicStudio.com, and in this video, I want to share with you some information that I have discovered that could impact your studio's growth, success, and development in 2022. Now, at Growing Music Studio, we have a really unique vantage point on our industry, and that is, in any given year, we come into contact with thousands of studios. We have a lot of clients that we're helping grow or develop group lesson programs or scale up. And in the process of working with those clients, and even folks who aren't clients, we have the opportunity to gather a lot of data, either through direct knowledge that we have of clients or surveys that people fill out when they first come into contact with us. And that has given me thousands upon thousands of data points to look at and see trends across our industry. And in this video, what I really want to show you is some things I think that can have a measurable impact on your success in 2022. I want to reveal some observations that I've had because of the maturation of our industry over the past 10 years. I'm going to explain what I mean by that in just a minute. But there are some things that I'm beginning to see developing that aren't like they were even a couple years ago. And then I want to make some observations at the end and even reveal a little bit of a secret project I'm working on that's going to be revealed later this month that is a result of all this observation and data crunching that I've been doing. So I've got a bunch of notes here. I'm going to be as brief and as poignant as possible so as to respect and honor your time. But I think these are observations that can really be of value. And let me start with that comment I made just a minute ago, which is the maturation of our industry. And I want to illustrate this with a story making a point about what I observe now versus 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I wrote a blog post called The Number One Tool, and it's something like this, the number one tool to get new music students in your studio. And in that, I revealed a simple concept that had helped my studio get literally hundreds of leads a year on a very, very tiny budget. And it's no secret, it's Google Ads, okay? I've never hidden that here. And any of our clients know that this is something that we teach almost out of the gate. There's a strategy that I've developed and refined over the years that as I got better at that strategy and refined it, I saw my ad budget go down and down and down and down and down. And what's interesting is that 5 years ago, not only as a client, as a coach and as a consultant, not only did I have to, quote, convince people to work with me, I had to convince people that they should trust this platform that they'd barely ever heard about. So I had two cases to make. I had two ideas to sell. The idea of working with a coach or consultant, part one, and part two, that you should use Google Ads. Over the past couple of years, a whole host of opportunistic people have come into our space. And I don't use that in a pejorative sense. Where there's opportunity, there will always be an entrepreneur to rush in and take advantage of that opportunity. And when I say opportunistic people, I'm really talking about there are more and more coaches and consultants and service providers than ever before in our industry. And so the idea of maturation is simply this, that there is now a much, much greater awareness of what a studio owner needs to do to have success than there was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I'd get on a call with a music studio owner and they'd have no idea what to do other than business cards and maybe posting flyers in local coffee shops. Now it's very rare that I meet someone who hasn't tried Facebook ads or Google ads and failed at it. 5 years ago, that just wasn't the case all that often, especially for smaller studios. Now, music schools, over 300, over 500, they were ahead of the curve because that's we're talking on a micro small business, much different than a single teacher studio. So there was an awareness there. But even 5 years ago, there were larger schools that had, quote unquote, tried Google ads and failed, or had tried Facebook ads and failed, and were a little bit gun shy to try it again. The old phrase of once bitten, twice shy. And so, because of that maturation, I'm now seeing that the challenges that face us as an industry are a little bit different than they were a few years ago. So, since the overall education and business savvy of our industry has changed, the challenges have changed as well. And this is where I want to segue, and I'm going to get back to those challenges in just a second. But I want to segue to some really interesting, at least I think, interesting data that I've discovered over this past year. And I think this will be quite resonant with people, because one of the projects that I went on over this past year in 2021, coming out of the pandemic and seeing the kind of stress that put on people in 2020, I wanted to see what are the goals of studio owners or school owners in our industry. And I make a distinction there. Typically, when I say a studio owner, I'm thinking of a studio that's maybe 100 students, 150 tops. And below that, I'll call it a studio, and above that, I'll call that a school. That's just kind of my shorthand for it. But you can kind of self-select in. But irrespective of what the size of the studio, we did a massive survey across all of our clients and across even non-clients who were willing to answer the questions as we put surveys out throughout the year. And we asked a number of questions, and the answers I got to this were really fascinating. I think the data that we have here, I think, can be measurably helpful for anyone who cares to listen to this video and chooses to act on it. So the first category, we looked at what the most common goals were for people in the music education industry. We asked, what are you working on in 2021? And we asked this in different ways, but we asked a series of questions where we really drew out what people were focused on. And from that, we could extrapolate what their struggle was. So here they are, the top 5 goals of people in our industry. And essentially I went through and was tabulating, every time I saw goal number 1, making a check mark for that goal. And so we were able to sift through these thousands of data points and kind of figure out what these things were. So I'm not going to keep you in too much suspense here, but what do you think that number 1 goal was? I'm going to tell you. I told you I wasn't going to keep you in suspense. That number 1 goal, was it educational? Was it personal? Well, here it is. It was to make more income. And I find that to be fascinating because actually the educational side of our industry, the product side of our industry, really didn't come up all that much. And I think that's just a sign that by and large, most people feel very secure in their teaching or very secure in the product that they are offering to the people in their studio or the people in their school. Or at the very least, if they don't feel super secure in it, it was, proportionally speaking, at least it was more secure than some of the things that they really put forward as a goal. So when I saw that just over and over and over again, I want to make more income, make more income, make more income, across all these people that we surveyed, I was honestly a little bit surprised. Now, I do want to qualify something. A lot of times in these surveys, we gave people an opportunity to qualify their answer or explain why they answered in the way that they did. I never got the sense that this make more income data point came from a place of greed or avarice or a place where people were willing to do anything for it, including being unethical or offer a poor product or overcharge for the product or take advantage of people. Never got that sense. Really, the sense I got was that by and large, people, for whatever reason, whether it was a business reason, a marketing reason, a sales reason, a retention reason, that people were, quote unquote, struggling with income. By the way, this was not limited only to smaller studios. There are cases with schools that I either personally worked with or knew of or had surveyed or had conversations with where maybe this school had 200, 300 kids, but because of overhead and costs, taxes, things of that nature, because of those line items, those expenses on their cash flow report, the owner was having to underpay themselves or possibly some months not even taking a paycheck. So this certainly wasn't limited to smaller studios. I really did find this to be true of mid-size and in some cases even larger studios as well, where, in the cases where I was working with one of these folks and was able to dig a little bit more into the situation, it really came down to operational problems that part of the reason for this difficulty was simply they had not scaled in the correct way, and obviously was working with that person to help correct that. But that was the number 1. Now, I thought that one was fascinating. I'm going to kind of shoot through these other ones maybe a little bit quicker so we can get to the second part here, which is the real reason why schools or studios aren't growing. And this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, but just give me a second, we're going to get to that. The number two, and I saw this quite a bit, was I would love to feel passion for my job again. Now, I'm kind of paraphrasing all of these data points that we got, all these answers that we collected. But again, when I read the context of those comments, people were saying that either the business side was so dominant, it was eating up so much of their time that they were really struggling to feel motivated to come to the job, or they'd lost their passion for the business. They loved the teaching, but they lost the passion for the business. Or there were in some cases where people had lost the passion for teaching because of frustrations around practice, or the business side had just sapped the joy from that side. So I thought that was interesting as well. We got that answer quite a bit. And again, you might hear some of these, and since these were so dominant in the surveys, maybe you didn't participate in our survey, but you're kind of feeling like, oh yeah, both of those are kind of true for me. I would be surprised, since these were the top answers. I imagine this is quite prevalent across our industry, because we've surveyed people in many different countries, many different ages, many different years of experience, many different instruments. So this is really a good cross-section of the private music education industry. Third, decreased stress. We got this one, again, quite a bit. When I looked at the context, a lot of times they were thinking of the stress first, but it was really related to the first two things. So I saw like decreased stress around the job, or decreased stress around money, that sort of thing. So I'm not going to hang on this one too much, just simply because it really just seems to be reinforcing the first two. Fourth one, wanted more time to spend with family or engage in hobbies, or just more time in general. They felt like the admin side of the job was taking up a lot of their time, or they were kind of sad that their evenings were gone because they were having to teach. So if they wanted to get to the income level that they wanted, they had to spend, they had to teach into the evening, things of that nature. There was a lot of context around this, like, oh, I just wish I could see more people during the daytime, things of that nature. But that was the fourth one. Fifth and final, and this I think has become more prevalent in the last year and a half, simply because of the circumstances of the pandemic last year. But a goal that I saw last year that I really haven't seen as much in previous years, certainly not enough to get up into the top 5 or 10, was wanting to grow another business venture outside of just doing lessons. I'm not going to hang on this one too long, but I've seen more people this year in the previous 5 years combined asking about, hey, is it possible for me to make an online music course? Like, I don't want my income to be simply bound by the hours that I work. Like, Daniel, do you think it's possible that I could build and market a music course? So I've seen a lot of that come in terms of just people reaching out to us for coaching or training for studio growth. But I also saw this show up in the surveys as well. Now, I want to get to the second part. I'm going to loosely title this, The Real Reason Your Studio Isn't Growing. And this goes back to what I said earlier. Our industry is maturing as it pertains to business knowledge. Information is no longer scarce. The information one needs to succeed on the business side of owning and running a music school, music studio, private lesson practice, whether you have 5 students or 500 students, that information is out there. And like I said earlier, 5 years ago, I had to convince people that Google AdWords was a good use of their funds and their time and attention and energy. Not so much anymore. People kind of already have that baked in. There's so many consultants and coaches out there that at least refer to it in passing, even if they don't teach how to do it, that the information is in place. The change that I've seen over the last 2 years versus when I started this business way back in 2015 is the reasons why people aren't getting to the success that they want. There's been a shift, in my opinion. I felt it intuitively over the past year, but when I really got into the data and started looking at all these surveys over the last month and a half, I saw data that helped me understand what that intuitive feeling was. And I've come up with what I'll call 5 reasons why your studio isn't growing, or 5 reasons why you aren't reaching your goals. When I look back across folks, who we surveyed and looked at the goals they had in 2021, and then asked them why they felt like they didn't get there, I began to see some patterns emerge. And you can't see that pattern from just one person, obviously, but I just saw it across a number of people. And then my experience, even in coaching and training hundreds of studios in the past year, has even borne this out. So here they are. The most common issues I see when people aren't reaching their goals. I think this could be helpful, because I think, if you look back on 2021 and you didn't get to your goals, or you only got to some, but some seem elusive, or if you've had the same goal for several years in a row and you're still not getting to it, you probably are going to fall into one of these categories. And even if you did reach all your goals in 2021, you probably have goals for 2022. And my hunch is that if you're achieving your goals easily, maybe, give yourself a little bit more of a challenge. But even as you think about your goals for the coming year, these categories could be helpful. And I put a lot of time into these, put some thought into this, just some reflection, because this is my job. And I really want to see clients succeed. I really want to see studio owners succeed. In all the ways that I've been involved in the music education industry, whether it's software or the summer camp that I ran for 10 years or the private studio, there's a soft place in my heart, for all of us. And so I think these categories will be helpful. So the first category is the first category, or the first reason as to why someone isn't getting the result they want or not reaching their goals, is just no support. I'm not going to stay on this one too long. I think on its face, it makes sense. If you have a goal, you're not getting to it, and you're not reaching out for information, but for support, this is a common reason why I see people not excelling or reaching those goals. And here's what I mean. Again, it's not the informational side. I'm going to give you an example. You might know that you need to do Google Ads. You go out, you read Google Ads, the Google Ads help file, you kind of generally figure it out, or you just use their tutorial, you set something up, you put the money in, maybe you use the $100 free credit, maybe you give it a little bit of budget over that, you spend $300, no students. And a lot of times I'll see people throw in the towel just at that point, or they'll try a little bit more and then get increasingly frustrated as they spend more money but still don't get a result. What could have changed that situation? Hiring a Google Ads certified contractor. I wouldn't recommend reaching out to Google support. They're not in the business of helping small business owners. They're in the business of getting you to spend more on Google Ads. They will give you bad advice. I've seen it over and over and over again, where literally we've helped a client have an amazing account, and then Google Ads support calls them up because their account is literally spending too efficiently. And so they just assume that they're not spending enough, and Google Ads will, not necessarily on purpose, give bad advice to the studio owner to increase the account spend, because Google's experience is that someone shouldn't be spending that efficiently, so they can't be getting a result. They need to spend more. That's just the mindset that they're in. So they give a bunch of bad advice, they ruin the account, and then we have to come in and help clean it up. So don't ever take advice from Google support. Most of the time they're going to give you bad advice that doesn't serve you. On the other hand, if you haven't worked with a professional, and it's definitely a professional that operates in our industry, they might actually help you if your account just isn't getting a result at all. But if you have an optimized account, if you have an account that's getting you a result, a lot of times listening to Google's advice is not. Most of the time it's been bad, just out of my experience. So no support. That's the first one. Second one, maybe the most dangerous of all, is weak support. And the reason why I say this is maybe the most dangerous of all is that there is an illusion of support. But in some cases, I want to tread lightly here. It's a case of blind leading the blind. I'm going to tell you a story. About midway through the year, someone reached out to me. They booked a call with me. They wanted to talk about growing their studio. They knew they had a problem. They knew that we could help them. Had a call with them. I kind of explained what it is that we do. how we can help people. I asked them a bunch of questions just so I made sure that I understood their situation really, really well. And they took that advice. I said, well, let me think about it. And in that call, I did kind of get the sense for that person, they were trying to figure out what it is that my marketing system for a studio is. But obviously, if it was something that could be communicated meaningfully in 30 minutes, it really wouldn't be all that valuable. But a lot of people come into these calls naively thinking like, oh, there's some secret, and if I could just pry it out of Daniel, then, I won't have to, invest more time or attention or money or energy into this. So obviously, I couldn't answer those questions. I felt like they were a little bit frustrated. But they had friended me on Facebook. Well, if you know anything about Facebook, if a friend posts in a group, Facebook will sometimes notify you, especially if that friend persistently posts. Well, this person went and posted the same question in like 5 or 6 different groups, and they were the same questions that they had asked me. And so I realized when they said, oh, let me think about whether I want to work with you or not, they really were kind of being disingenuous. They didn't intend to. They were really just trying to get these questions answered. Unfortunately, the answers that they got in these groups were superficial, surface level answers. But to this person, it probably felt as if they were getting support. So when I say weak support, this is the idea that I want to put out there. That we hear that phrase, the wisdom of crowds, but unfortunately, most of the time when I see a marketing question being answered in a forum or a Facebook group or things of that nature, there might be 1 or 2 good answers in there, but a lot of times it's just, even if it is good advice, it isn't deep enough and it doesn't have enough context for it to actually be meaningful to the person who's asking the question. And what ends up happening is it really just becomes infotainment. It's not something that one can really act upon in a deep and meaningful way, or at least in a way that will cause a significant change. Now, of course, I'm sure there's someone watching who's like, well, actually, I asked a question in a Facebook group and I got a great answer. Of course, the exceptions prove the rule. But by and large, I don't see people making huge changes as a result of participation in these distracting online forums and things of that nature. And this even extends to, some paid groups. There are all kinds of groups out there where they're kind of selling access to a community of people, but it's really kind of what you're getting in the free Facebook groups as well. And I don't want to throw shade on anyone out there. I'm not saying that they can't be helpful. And if someone's not at the intensity level of really wanting to deeply solve the problem, then there might be some value they can extract out of there. But, and this is really where I want to go in just a minute and how I want to end the video, the true answer to all this is actually staring us in the face. If there is anyone that should understand how to get a result, it should be music teachers. I'm going to follow up on that. But let me just end this second point here briefly by saying that that weak support is possibly the most dangerous of all. The free advice, the advice that doesn't cost you anything or cost you very little. It would be as if you were trying to learn, the Appassionata by Beethoven, or a guitar solo, a really difficult guitar solo, and you went to a free guitar Facebook group and was trying to figure out how to learn this there. You have this complex project, this complex problem you're trying to solve, and you're posting about it in a Facebook group. Again, you might get lucky, or you might just have the kind of personality that can extract value out of that. But most of the time, I don't see that working out very well for people. Okay, I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I want to tell you a couple of the common issues that I see. And again, this goes back to how I've seen our industry mature in terms of its business savvy. Because the third one that I've seen is I just don't know what to do. And now, this is different than the previous one. These folks have the information, and they've got good information. But they're novices at applying the information, and so they feel stuck because they don't know the order in which they need to do it, or they lack the overall bigger picture context to put it in, to put it into place or put it into practice. So for all three of these that I've just mentioned, the solution is what I hinted at a minute ago: high quality feedback. For the person who has no support, high quality feedback is going to help them. For the person who has weak support, or they're being sold information, but they're not really getting support with that information, like in challenge groups or things of that nature. Or they have the correct information, they're maybe even getting a small result with it, but they're not getting the floodgates opened. They're not seeing growth. They're not seeing income growth. They're not seeing a lot of leads. They're not seeing improvements in their group programs. Just like they have some good information, but they're not. Again, the solution is high quality feedback. And then I want to briefly talk about the last two things that I've seen in terms of when I ask folks in these surveys, what are you struggling with and why do you feel like you haven't gotten to your goal yet? Those goals I mentioned before, more income, would love to feel passionate for my job again. I want to decrease stress. I want to spend more time with my family or just spend less time doing things that I don't enjoy doing around the studio or growing other business ventures. When I ask, why aren't you achieving these yet? These things I'm talking about right now were the answers. The last two I think were really, really interesting. And they didn't have necessarily to do with information, but it was more internal. The last two are accountability and motivation. People felt like they didn't have accountability, like they're just alone in their career. Or that aloneness has now persisted for so long that they're just feeling a lack of motivation. So once again, high quality feedback would help there. And this is really where I want to wrap the video up and talk about that secret project that I hinted at the beginning. And I would get to this by asking, how much do you resonate with these ideas? And honestly, I rarely do this, but just write something in the comments below, wherever you're watching this. What ideas here are resonating with you? Because there's a solution that's staring us all right in the face. And I alluded to this before. We are music teachers, and we commonly see students. Do we tell those students like, hey, you want to learn that song? Or you want to learn how to play, a C scale? You've never played one before? Or you want to learn common guitar chord fingerings? Or you want to, learn to sing in head voice? If you're a voice teacher, obviously. No piano student of mine should have come to me to talk about singing in head voice. Let me just tell you that right now. We wouldn't point them to a YouTube video. We wouldn't point them to an online forum. What do they need? Well, yeah, they need information, but they need high quality feedback. And I think the solution for most people, and this again ties into that maturation that I talked about earlier, our industry has matured and business savvy. Like there are no mysteries now about how to grow a studio, about how to have success, about how to increase income. It really comes down to high quality feedback. If you look back at some of those reasons that your studio isn't growing, those could also apply to a music student. Like they don't have support. What do they need? High quality feedback. They have weak support. Like they're looking at YouTube videos to figure out how to solve, a problem or to learn how to play songs. And of course, when those students come to us and they've already been learning how to play the piano on a YouTube video, or they've been we have to help them unlearn bad technique. It'd just be better if you come to me right away. What were you doing? What were you thinking? But of course, we're excited for their excitement. They were at least motivated enough to go to the YouTube video. And now they see, and now they can come to us and experience success faster, which is always exciting. Sometimes people came to me, I don't know what to do. This was more common with adult students, obviously. And of course, what does every piano student need, or voice student, or violin student? What do they need? They need accountability. Think about the kind of person that would come to you and say, hey, I don't know if we can come every week to lessons. It seems like a little bit much, or we're trying to save money, or I love this one, the parent who would say, I noticed they're not practicing very much, so maybe we should go to every other week lessons. Because then they would have practiced enough to actually warrant a lesson. And what of course happens if we were naive enough to buy into the parents' line of reasoning? We probably all made this mistake early in our careers. Oh, well, let's try that. Well, what's the student do? They don't even practice the first week. So they practice even less, and their progress slows down exponentially. Because now having a lesson only every other week doesn't slow their progress by half. It probably slows it by 3 times or 4 times, simply because they need a certain level of intensity to make progress. We all know this. So what does every student need? They need that accountability. And what about if they don't have motivation? Well, we can do things to make their journey easier for them. And my own experience in teaching music was that I focused very little on trying to motivate kids to practice or punish them for not practicing. I put all my energy and effort into making the lessons themselves feel so much easier, and I saw an increase in practice as a result because I focused on making their journey easier. All of this is staring us in the face. What we need as an industry is not more information at this point. What we need is high quality feedback. And this is why at Grow even, the programs that we put out there have typically not relied too much on the community support side. Most of the folks in our industry, or at least in helping studios grow, they really rely. We've taken kind of a hard-nosed stance against that because it's, as I said earlier, and I want to be careful in saying this because it doesn't mean that it's always true. I do want to acknowledge that. But by and large, what I've seen is that as I've helped people directly in their marketing and given direct feedback on their marketing and coached them in their marketing, they move much, much faster than if they just bought a course that didn't include high quality support and high quality feedback. When you just buy information, it's kind of like listening to an overpriced audiobook. This is why all of our trainings come with support and feedback, or at the very least, we don't price them in kind of a premium way if it is just information. And typically the things that we present as solutions for studio owners, if it is simply information, it tends to be not very complex. It tends to be the low-hanging fruit that doesn't require a lot of feedback or support on. So with that in mind, this is kind of where we're going to wrap up. I think as an industry, or as individual studio owners, as you look towards 2022 and you kind of contemplate these trends that I've mentioned here earlier in the video, like the common goals that people have, and then the common obstacles or reasons why they haven't gotten to those goals, what I'm interested in talking about and wrapping this video up with this is kind of this secret project that I told you about earlier. And that is simply this, that for those that kind of resonate with that message, the idea that if they were to have accountability, if there was someone there to give them high quality support and high quality feedback, that they have this palpable sense of, oh, that actually does feel like what's missing. I recognize what's been in front of my face the whole time. I would never send a student to YouTube to figure out if they were playing this song right or wrong. I'll tell them that. I have the experience to do that as a teacher. All of us would say that to our student. Similarly, if you're in this position where you know you have the information, or you know that you could easily go out and Google how to grow a small business, but you find yourself stymied, stuck. If you have this internal sense of, oh, that could be what's missing, it's that I didn't have the feedback. I didn't have the support. I didn't have something to help me accelerate towards that goal. I didn't, just like a music student that might have struggled trying to self-teach for a year or two, and then you see more progress in 12 weeks or 24 weeks with them working with you. Well, that's the reason why. Because now they're with a professional that can help them and give them direct feedback. Not a group, not a forum, not a community, but direct feedback from a professional. And this kind of ties into the secret project that we're going to be announcing a little bit later this month, something that I have been working years towards, and I'm very excited to deliver more information along these lines over the next couple weeks. So you're going to see more videos around this. You're going to see resources and articles that we put out that you can use, take in, perhaps, even though I've just spent the last half hour talking a little bit about this, but there are some palpable things that you will be able to take from this, even just to self-monitor and make yourself a little bit better of a self-coach. But if what you really want is acceleration towards goals that perhaps have eluded you, then I would just say stay tuned, because I'm very excited to talk about what it is and share with you what it is that we're going to be announcing over the coming weeks. Just looking at my notes here, make sure that there isn't anything that I haven't covered. I talked about all the survey items. But yeah, let me just say that it's very likely that you might be at a point in your career where this feels resonant with you, or a point in your journey, or even you've had some success, but getting to that next level, and I experienced this several times over the last 10 years, that getting that next level, it just felt like I was banging my head against a ceiling that was made of steel. there were times where I brought someone else in to help me get through that steel ceiling, or at least show me where the secret staircase was. So before I start using any more ridiculous analogies, I think we'll end right there. Thank you so much for your time and attention. It's very precious in this day and age, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. If this was helpful, send it to a friend, hit the like button, follow us on YouTube or Facebook. Really appreciate that. And as always, leave questions, comments, complaints in the comments below. I always answer them, get those notifications right through Facebook or on YouTube, and love having that dialogue with you. You can reach out to me, Daniel at growyourmusicstudio.com. We'll see you in the next